When you're camping, you sometimes have chance encounters. That's part of the fun of camping. I'll never forget the night I met. I don't even know what I met. Maybe you can tell me. I was on my way to visit my parents as I do every year. 16 hours one way, same on the way back. To be on the safe side, I never made the trip in one go, usually stopping overnight at a freeway service area and sleeping in my truck to save on hotel bills. This year, the trip had started in the same way as usual, comfortably seated with a cushion under my buttocks for comfort, snacks on the passenger seat, and a list of podcast episodes on my phone connected to my car. In short, a total blast. Around 7 p.m., I pulled into the parking lot of a small gas station in a secluded spot so I could spend the night peacefully. I was sitting comfortably in the back seat, windows covered for privacy, finishing the instant noodles I'd bought at the gas station store while watching YouTube videos on my phone. The gas station had a few street lamps scattered here and there, and there was one not far from me whose warm light filtered through the gaps in the window, covering at some point I must have fallen asleep. I woke up in my mind. I looked up to see what had woken me up and a few seconds later, the person knocked twice on the window again. What the hell was that? I wondered who could come knocking on the window of a car parked in a gas station parking lot so late. Hello? I finally asked. No answer at first, then a woman's voice. Do you have a light? What? Do I have a light? I'm sorry, can you repeat that? Again, the woman replied. Do you have a light? There was something strange in her voice. She sounded flat, as if she were repeating a memorized text in a foreign language. I straightened up, looking out the window. I could see the woman's motionless silhouette thanks to the lampposts that stood at a distance behind her. No, I finally replied. No. Sorry. Silence again. Do you have a light? Was this a joke? Look, I don't have a light. I've already told you. Leave me alone. I'd like to be able to sleep in peace, okay? Ask someone else. She didn't move from where she was, despite my refusal to lend her a light. What was wrong with her? Can you lend me your phone? She continued in the same emotionless voice. I don't know what she wanted from me, but I could sense that something was wrong with her. What for? I asked to see if her story would hold up. For phone, she just kept repeating phone over and over in a slow, shrinking voice as if the word was coming from deep in her throat. It gave me goosebumps. Stop it, all right. I'm not giving you my phone. Now get out before I call the cops. In truth, I'd already reached for my phone, only to realize that I'd drained the battery by falling asleep and leaving it on. I was alone, with no way of calling anyone for help. Then she started to bash her head against my window while continuing to repeat phone. Stop it. Hey, stop it. I screamed in panic. I turned back to the front seat to retrieve the flashlight I'd always kept in the glove compartment, returned to my seat, and turned it on in the direction of the window. Nothing. She was gone. What the fuck? Did she just disappear? Without getting out of the car, I started to get closer to each window and point the flashlight everywhere, just looking for a silhouette, including the ground, to see if she was hiding somewhere, waiting for me to get out. I don't know what had happened. At first I thought maybe it was a bait to lure me out of the car and rob me, but now I didn't know what to think. It was just the strangest thing that had ever happened to me, and my heart was still racing from the adrenaline. There seemed to be nothing around the car, at least as far as I could see from inside. The night was calm again, but I still didn't dare go out. I caught my breath and managed to calm down after a while. When I tell my parents about this, they won't believe it, I muttered. As I couldn't hear anything, I decided to try to sleep for a few more hours. Even though I didn't have the time on my phone, I could see through the gaps in the windows that it was still pitch dark outside. I lay down again and tried to sleep, but to no avail. The stress and tension were still coursing through my body too intensely for that. At some point during the night, I sat up after hearing a pop and realized that the bulb in the nearest streetlight had gone out. After about 1 hour, I think, as my mind wandered between wakefulness and sleep, I was again disturbed by the same sound at the window, which now had the effect of raising the hairs on the back of my neck. She was back, I thought to myself. Sir, I'm Officer Wake. I've been informed of a disturbance in the parking lot. Is everything all right? It was the voice of a young man, obviously a policeman. I began, not really knowing what to say. Yes? Well, no, everything's fine. Just a lost woman who came to ask me for a light in the middle of the night. But she's gone now, everything's fine. Are you sure, sir? Yes, I'm sure. I don't know who called you. Maybe someone alerted by the noise and my screams, I said with a laugh, the pressure easing. Please step out of the vehicle, sir. I just want to be sure that everything is all right, he asked in an authoritative voice. No, really, I assure you everything's fine. I said, get out of the vehicle. Wow, what the fuck was his problem? Audi said in a loud voice. The hairs on the back of my neck were starting to stand up. Something's wrong. Where's your car? I asked. No answer. Who called you? Still no answer. I moved slowly away from the pitch black window. With trembling hands, I grabbed the flashlight I'd kept with me and turned it towards the window, and there in front of me was the silhouette of the woman. The same one who'd harassed me a few hours earlier. Leave me alone, I screamed. Out like the last time, she began to repeat the same word over and over in a slow, shrinking voice. Her voice was now somewhere between that of the police officer she'd imitated, I don't know how, and her original voice. All at once, she disappeared and I heard her weight fall on my front hood. This woman, this thing, was now attacking my car. If she couldn't get me out, she was going to force her way in. I stopped thinking and lunged for the front seat. I grabbed the keys and started the engine. I still couldn't see anything in front of me because of the window cover on the windscreen, so despite the fact that I didn't know what I was going to discover in front of me, I removed it. She was standing on her hands and knees on the hood, both hands on the windscreen, her forehead pressed against the glass. She had two pure white eyes, long, dirty black hair that reached down to her feet, and a single white dress that reached down to her ankles for all clothing. Her wide, inhuman smile began to spread across her face. I pressed the gas pedal. The car sped off. She was still standing on the hood, but as I zigzagged, I finally managed to knock her onto her side. I continued straight towards the parking lot exit to get back on the freeway. Behind me, I could see her silhouette running towards my car, and even over the noise of the engine, I could hear her gaunt cries. I drove for about 2 hours on the freeway. I kept thinking about what had just happened and wondering who she was and what she wanted from me. I didn't have any answers, but one thing was certain. I'd had a narrow escape. Eventually, the adrenaline left my body and an intense fatigue overcame me to the point of forcing me to stop. I'd just survived a supernatural encounter. This was no time to die from a car accident. I pulled into a gas station parking lot. I leaned my head against the window just to rest my eyes at first, but 5 minutes later, I was fast asleep. I woke up at the same time as the sun. I yawned and stretched, glad to be alive after that crazy night, and definitely not able to wait to tell my family and friends. But as I walked around the car to stretch my legs after spending the night inside, I noticed something that still haunts and terrorizes me every night. My truck had accumulated a certain amount of road dust, so it was easy to leave marks just by running a finger over it. And there, right in front of my eyes, I could see that there were fingerprints all over the windows and doors, as if someone had been desperately trying to get inside while I was asleep. At first I thought it was from the night I'd spent in the other parking lot, but then I saw them, dozens of bloody bare footprints all around my truck. I'm not sure what's going on, and I feel like I'm losing my grip on things. I'm a principal at a small elementary school in a quiet suburban town. Recently, something strange has been happening with a few of my students, and it's got me a little unnerved. I'm hoping someone here can shed some light on it, because honestly, I'm not sure what to make of it anymore. Over the past month or so, I've had multiple kids come into my office, each with a similar story, something about a man in the woods behind the school. At first, I figured it was just kids being kids coming up with stories to get attention or something like that. But the more I heard it, the more it started to feel strange. Here's what the kids have been telling me. They say there's a man who lives in the woods just behind the school. He's always whistling a tune, a soft, eerie sound that seems to carry through the trees, and some of them have heard the whistling on their way home. Others have said they've seen the man in the distance, standing still between the trees, watching them, but it's the details that are starting to get to me. The kids aren't just describing the man in vague terms, some of them describe things I hate to imagine on or near school property, or to any of my students outside of school. One child even mentioned that the man always says, "Come closer, I won't hurt you." I've talked to the parents about it, but they seem just as puzzled. One mother even mentioned that her child, one of the higher achieving ones, Evan, has been acting unusually paranoid, afraid to walk anywhere near the woods. His parents were convinced something happened to him, but when I pressed him about it, he just said he'd had a nightmare about the man. I chalked it up to an overactive imagination, but the more kids come to me with similar stories, the harder it is to ignore. I went into the woods myself after school one day to make sure nothing was going on. I figured if there was anyone out there, I'd put an end to it and just tell them to stay away from the school grounds and keep their distance from the kids. I walked into the woods for a good while. I didn't hear anything unusual, no whistling, no movement. I made sure to take a good look around, even went as far as the old boundary fence, and there was nothing. No sign of anyone. But then, just as I was turning to head back, I heard it. A faint whistle barely audible over the rustling of the trees. I figured it was just the wind at first, but it wasn't. It was too deliberate, too rhythmic. It stopped just as suddenly as it started. I was already out of the woods and back to my car by then, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I know it sounds crazy, I know. But after everything the kids have been saying, and now this strange sound in the woods, I can't help but wonder if something is going on that I'm missing. Anyway, I'm just reaching out to see if anyone here has ever heard of anything like this before. Is it just kids with wild imaginations, or is there something more to this than I'm understanding? Should I be concerned? Thanks in advance for any help. I'd only been living in my new apartment for a week when I found the note. It was folded and wedged behind the breaker panel in the hallway, a place I never would have looked if my lights hadn't gone out that night. The handwriting on the envelope was shaky and thin, and it was addressed simply to the new tenant, apt. Force. I should have tossed it. But I was still feeling out this new home, still unsettled by the shape of it. The odd angles of the walls, the musty scent that came and went with no pattern. The people next door, when I caught a glimpse of them, moved as if uncertain how human bodies should work. And then there was the old woman I sometimes spotted by the mailboxes, muttering about the time coming around again. I wanted answers, so I sat on my dusty couch under the flickering emergency lamp and read, "Dear tenant of Force, I lived here before you. If you're reading this, I never came back for my things. Good. Don't search for me. Just know I'm sorry to leave you with this burden, but no one warned me, and I believe you deserve a chance. This building has rules. They're not posted anywhere official, but you'll understand why soon enough. Follow them carefully. If you don't, you'll regret it. We all do. Never acknowledge the knocking at your door if it happens after 2:17 a.m. It starts softly, a gentle tap, 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 and escalates to something desperate. No matter how human it sounds, do not open that door. You may hear a familiar voice. Ignore it. They want in. Don't let them in. If you take the elevator after midnight, don't look at your reflection in the metal doors. If you catch its eyes, it will smile. Do not smile back. Press your floor button without blinking, and do not look up until the doors open again. If you look too soon, you might find yourself stepping out onto a hallway that doesn't belong to our building or this world. On the third Wednesday of each month, a man in a green jacket stands at the end of the hall near the fire escape. He will tip his hat at you and hold out his hand. Do not give him anything, no spare change, no greeting, not even a glance. Lock yourself in your apartment, turn the bathroom tap on full, and hum a tune until you hear him leave. The humming helps. I don't know why. Sometimes you'll smell something sweet and wrong in your bedroom, like overripe fruit and spoiled milk. If you wake to that smell between 1:11 and 1:33 a.m., don't turn on the lights. There's something perched on top of the dresser watching. It hates sudden brightness. Just close your eyes and pretend to sleep. It'll leave before your alarm rings, I promise. The letter you received from management, I'm sure they gave you one, mentions no pets are allowed. That's for your own safety. Strays come to the hallway, sometimes hairless cats, or so they seem. If one follows you inside, never let it be alone with any leftover food. That's how they get stronger. If you run into Mrs. Dalton from 5B and she tells you about her grandchildren visiting upstairs in units long abandoned, ignore her. Smile, nod, and move on. Those units are empty, have been for years since the fire. Anyone claiming otherwise wants you to join them. Don't. Lastly, if you find a note like this one and think it's a joke, that's your choice. But you've probably already noticed things. The damp patch on your ceiling that changes shape nightly, the way your reflection sometimes lags in the hall mirror, the whistling you can't quite place. The whistling is worst of all. When it starts, you must not investigate. Let it pass. To acknowledge it is to invite it closer, and you don't want that. I'm sorry. I tried to follow the rules and failed. I left in a hurry. I don't know if you can make it here, but maybe you're stronger than I was. Maybe you'll adapt like some tenants do. Perhaps you'll learn the rhythms of this building's strange nightlife, find a way to coexist, even thrive. Good luck. Truly. See, I read the letter 3 times. With each reading, my heart pounded harder. The silence in the apartment pressed in. Outside, the old radiator hissed, and somewhere above me, something heavy scraped across the floor. I remembered last night. The faint knock at 2:20 a.m., I'd assumed it was a drunk neighbor, lost in the wrong corridor. I hadn't answered. Now, I realized that had been the right choice, though purely by luck. A quiet whistle drifted through the door. My blood turned to ice. Just a few bars of some unfamiliar melody, and then silence again. I clenched the note in my hands so tightly the paper crumpled. The rules spun in my head. Don't investigate. Just let it pass. My phone buzzed. A text from my boyfriend who was working late shifts across town. He joked about loving our new place, told me I should get some rest. But how could I sleep, knowing what I knew now? The whistling started again. Longer this time, the tune winding through minor keys, almost mocking. I shut my eyes. It's just a sound, I told myself, just a trick of acoustics in an old building. The ceiling creaked overhead. The damp patch above my bed? Would it be darker tonight? Maybe tinged red like the note suggested? My mind conjured horrors I never would have imagined before moving here. I forced myself to breathe slowly, evenly. The whistling stopped. Then something scratched at my door so light I almost missed it. I checked the time on my phone, 2:14 a.m., not yet the forbidden time. The note said after 2:17. Did I have time to turn out the lights, hide in bed? Or would acknowledging it now be as dangerous as acknowledging it later? The handle rattled softly, a patient test. A faint voice followed my boyfriend's voice, calling my name. He was supposed to be at work miles away. I knew better. I'd just gotten a text from him seconds ago. My real boyfriend wouldn't be home for hours. My heart hammered. Don't let them in, the note had said. I turned off the lamp, crept back to my bedroom. The boards creaked under me, and outside the voice whispered softly, "Please, please open up." It's raining out here. I forgot my key. My phone glowed in my hand, screen lighting my trembling fingers. No new messages. I thought of calling the police, but what would I say? A stranger's at my door, imitating my boyfriend's voice. Rules about hairless cats and midnight elevators wouldn't help my credibility. Footsteps in the hallway. The handle fell silent. Then came the humming. A melody that matched the whistling shape, but hummed deep and low, like a lullaby from a throat not made to sing. I clenched my jaw so tightly it hurt. They want in. Don't let them in. I curled under the blankets, knife from the kitchen drawer in hand. The note never mentioned a weapon, but it felt right. I waited, stomach twisted in knots. The humming wavered as if something pressed its ear to the door, listening for my breath, my heartbeat. Eventually, it moved away. The silence returned, heavy and wrong. In that silence, I knew two things. I wouldn't sleep a wink tonight, and I couldn't leave. Leaving would mean crossing that hallway, waiting for the elevator, risking a glance at that metal reflection. It would mean daring the late-night world outside, full of shadows and unanswered questions. So I stayed, eyes wide, mind racing. I tried to remember the exact melody of the whistling, how it began, if it ended on a note that promised resolution or discord. I couldn't recall. At some point, I must have dozed off because I woke to the pale light of dawn, heart still pounding, the note still crumpled in my hand. I survived one night. Just one. The building stands quiet now, as if waiting to see what I'll do next. There's a subtle scrape in the wall behind my bed, and I think I hear the faint echo of laughter from upstairs. The letter said the first few weeks are the worst. I can't imagine this lasting weeks, but I have no choice. I must learn. I must adapt. Before I put down my phone, I glance at the note one last time, memorizing its rules. They might save me, or they might just prolong the inevitable. And now I understand the previous tenant's warning. Once you know the truth, once the melodies and voices and knocks start, there's no going back. This place has claimed many before me, and it's patient. So patient. They want in. I won't let them, I hope.